All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from, and I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And today is Tuesday, December 30th. 2025. I didn't have time to, get my Miss on Monday video done yesterday, but, I'm going to make up for it today. So I have this article from Fox News, and it says North Korea, Slovakia, says North Korea fires cruise missiles as Kim underscores nuclear ambitions. So I'm just going to read this article. And I bring out a couple of scriptures. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying and straight to the point. And it says, North Korea test fired 2 strategic cruise missiles as leader Kim Jong-un pledged to continue unlimited development of his nuclear stockpile, according to state media. And Slovakia, I'm just about over this code, still, lingering. It says the launches involved cruise missiles designed to carry nuclear warheads, according to North Korea's state-run Korean Central News Agency, or KCNA. Kim promised to devote all their efforts to the unlimited and unsustained development of the state nuclear combat force. It says the weapons flew over the country's west coast for close to 3 hours. KCNA said it did not reveal how far the missiles traveled. It says KCNA said the drills were intended to demonstrate the combat readiness of the nuclear deterrence force and ensure the country's ability to carry out what is called a swift and overwhelming retaliation strike in the event of war. The launch drills served as a clear warning to the enemies who are seriously threatening the security environment of the Democratic Peoples of Korea. KCNA reported, using the country's formal name. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said its military detected the launch of multiple cruise missiles around 8 a.m. Says Sunday from the Sunan area near Pyongyang. Says a spokesperson for South Korea's defense ministry said the launches were a part of a series of recent military activities by North Korea that undermine peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. North Korea has also recently highlighted what it claims is progress on a nuclear-powered submarine program, releasing new images of Kim inspecting construction at a shipyard alongside his daughter. So Slovakia, I know I'm not going to read the whole article, but you pretty much get the point. North Korea, just tested, a couple of their missiles, man. So again, that's the time that we're in, man. We're in a time of war, and we clearly see things are still continuing to heat up until that great and dreadful day of World War III, aka, the day of the Lord. And then again, Slovakia. for how it sound. So I'm just gonna read a couple scriptures. Didn't want to make this one too long, so I'm gonna start with the book of Isaiah, chapter 54, and verse 16. And it says, "Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. And they have created the waster to destroy." And we can see that, taking place with these modern day scientists and physicists, which would be, the smith, that bloweth the coals, because what does a blacksmith do? They create weapons of war. And in today's time, these scientists and physicists, they aren't just creating, any old weapons of war. They're creating weapons of mass destruction. That's the instrument for its work, and that's the waster to destroy, the nuclear missiles, and in particular the warhead, So this is what North Korea, among the other nuclear armed nations, are doing. They're gearing up for war, because this war is primarily going to be this war is primarily going to be fought between, the United States and Russia, aka, the bear and the whore. That's who this war is going to be between, So, let me real quick jump to the book of Revelation, chapter 9, and verse 12, and it says, "One woe was past, and behold, there come two more woes hereafter." And that one woe that is past is talking about World War One, which took place between, 1915 and 1919, which was a very devastating war, So that first woe is past, right? So I'm going to jump to Revelation chapter 11 and verse 14. And it says, "The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly, and right." The first woe is past. Now it says what? The second woe is past, which is what? World War II, which took place from 1939 to 1945, And again, World War II was a very devastating war, that took place as well. But this coming Third World War, the first two world wars aren't going to be able to compare to it, because this is the war to end all wars, because I'm pretty sure when those two wars took place, people thought, that was it, especially World War II, that was going to be the war to end all wars, But we clearly see that's not the case, because there's a third war, that is going to take place. And just like it says, it's coming quickly, So jump back to the book of Isaiah, chapter 9, and want to get verse 5. And it says, "For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise and garments rolled in blood. But this shall be of burning and fuel of fire." And right, that's how this coming world war is going to be fought, primarily with these nuclear missiles. You will have ground troops that are going to be going to war with each other, but this war is primarily going to be fought with these nukes, because it's not going to be how traditional warfare was fought, hand-to-hand combat, the different men of war having, the different, weapons of war, charging each other in the center of the battlefield. It's not going to be like that. Nukes are going to fly. So, we get the book of Isaiah chapter 13 and verse 4. It says, the noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the host of the battle. And right, this is talking about the nukes, man, the warheads in particular, because you're going to hear them, before you even see them, because they're going to make a great noise. And this is what this describing. You're hearing a very, very loud noise. You're going to hear that jettison pack, that rocket propulsion system guiding these missiles to their target. Verse 5, and it's the point. It says, they come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. And that's exactly what's going to happen. These nukes are going to come from, a far place from one end of the earth, and they're going to land in the other. So they're going to be launched from the east, and they're going to land in the west. So, North Korea is just one of the few nuclear armed nations that are going to take down Babylon. So this is why they're testing, getting ready. Russia also, tested, a nuke, which they had a broken arrow. But just know that during the time of World War III, there won't be any broken arrows. So I'm just going to get a couple more and that'll be it. It's the book of Joel, chapter 3, and verse 9. It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say I'm strong. And indeed, this is what the different nations are doing. They're gearing up for war. They're exhausting all of their resources into their military, and if they're a nuclear armed nation, toward their nuclear programs. North Korea is just one of the few nuclear armed nations that, this is what they're saying, they're a weak country saying they're strong now, because they have the same technology that, America has, which is what the nukes. So I'm going to end it back in Revelation chapter 9 and verse 15. And it says, and the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the third part of men. Slakia. And again, previously in Revelation, the 7th chapter, you read about these same 4 angels, because these are 4 literal angels holding back the 4 winds, which the 4 winds represent the destruction that is going to take place, in the earth, primarily here in Babylon, because Babylon is going to be destroyed. Because there's a particular, hour, day, month, and year when this war is going to take place. So again, 4 little angels holding back the 4 winds, which the 4 winds represent, the coming destruction that is going to take place. And just like it says, for to slay the third part of men, because you have 3 classes of men on the earth today. You have the sons of God, which today are known as the biblical Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, the tribe of Judah, all the way down to the tribe of Issachar. You have the sons of men, which are the different heathen nations. And then you have the sons of the wicked, which is Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, or the so-called white race, Edom, because that's what this destruction is for. It's for the third part of men. They're the third part of men. The wicked, that's who it's for. But you will have 2/3 of the nation of Israel that are going to get caught up in this destruction, for their wickedness. And then, whatever heathens are over here during that particular time, you're just collateral damage, man. You would just Your only purpose was just to come to Babylon to make a little money and then be destroyed, you know, during World War III. So, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till next time I say shalom.